Imagine stepping off the coach into Paris, where every street is barely 6 meters wide. Sewage runs in open gutters and thousands jostle along the slippery mud. Yet, beneath this medieval chaos, the Seine strains to feed a hungry city of over 500,000. Before revolution rewrites everything, why did this city's rhythms grow so tense? And what did Parisians sense lurking just beyond the next bend? Step into the heart of 18th century Paris, and you stand in a labyrinth of lanes so narrow that two carts struggle to pass without scraping doorways. Most streets measure less than 6 meters across, pressed tight between timber-framed facades that lean out overhead, blocking the sky and trapping the city's damp air. Upper stories jut above the street, their wooden beams blackened by centuries of smoke, while ground floors open onto crowded stalls and battered shop signs swinging from iron hooks. Beneath your feet, the cobblestones are slick with mud, worn into deep ruts by wagon wheels and the constant tread of sabots. In rain, the stones vanish under ankle-deep slurry, and in dry spells, dust chokes the alleys. A shallow gutter runs down the center of every lane, not a trickle, but a slow, grimy current carrying away everything the city discards. Peelings, fish bones, broken crockery, animal dung, and the waste from chamber pots, emptied from above. The stench is inescapable, a mixture of rotting produce, horse manure, and the acrid tang of tanneries on the wind. Navigating these streets is a challenge for everyone. Pedestrians skip between puddles, skirts and trousers, spattered with filth, while cart drivers shout warnings as they coax stubborn horses through the crush. Children dart between wheels chasing stray dogs or scraps of bread. Doorways are crowded with buckets, straw bundles, and the crutches of beggars, narrowing the passage even further. Each morning, the city's rhythm begins here, in these cramped arteries where movement is slow, deliberate, and never clean. With every step, the physical realities of Parisian life press close, a daily negotiation with mud, refuse, and the bodies of thousands, all sharing space in a city built for far fewer souls. At the edge of these tangled streets, the city's lifeblood flows steadily past. The Seine is never quiet. Dawn brings a procession of timber rafts, each stacked high and steered by men whose hands are calloused from the pole. Broad, flat-bottomed barges slide through the mist, their holds packed with sacks of grain, barrels of wine, and bundles of firewood, essentials for a city of more than 500,000. Quaysides bristle with activity as labourers haul crates and shout over the groan of ropes and the slap of water against stone. Arguments break out when space runs short, because every boat jockeys for a berth, and every delay means food or fuel waiting just out of reach. Along the banks, rows of low, floating laundry boats bob against the current. Dozens of washerwomen bend over the water, skirts hitched above their ankles, arms red from the cold, beating linens against wooden planks. Their laughter and gossip carry above the splash of soapy water, mingling with the gruff voices of dockworkers and the sharp cries of fishmongers hawking the morning's catch. The air is thick with the scent of river mud, fresh bread from a nearby oven, and as the sun rises higher, the sour tang of refuse drifting downstream. Crossing the Pont Neuf, crowds surge toward the Ile de la Cité. Under the shadow of Notre Dame, the city's pulse gathers. Beggars cluster near the cathedral doors, hands outstretched. Merchants jostle for space beside worshippers and priests. Church bells toll the hour, their sound rolling across the river and through the maze of streets. For a few moments, all classes, rich and poor, stranger and native, share the same patch of cobblestone. Here, the city's needs and hopes converge, each person drawn by faith, hunger, or simple habit to this ancient crossroads. Bread is not just food in Paris, it is survival, the backbone of every meal and the single largest expense for most families. In the shadow of Les Halles, the city's sprawling central market, crowds press shoulder to shoulder at dawn, eyes fixed on the day's loaves. For the poor, bread can swallow up to 80% of a household's income. When prices rise, anxiety spreads faster than the scent of baking. In 1775, a new edict from Controller General Turgot swept away old controls on grain, promising abundance but delivering shock. Overnight, the cost of bread soared. Rumors of hoarding and speculation rippled through the market stalls. On April the 22nd, thousands gathered near Les Halles, shouting for fair prices, overturning carts, forcing bakers to sell at what they called the just price. The riot swelled to nearly 8,000, overwhelming city guards. Bakeries shuttered their doors as women and laborers demanded flour and loaves, some breaking windows, others seizing sacks of grain. Troops arrived to restore order, but the message was clear. In Paris, bread is a right, and the crowd will defend it with force if it is threatened. Behind the battered doors of Parisian tenements, families squeeze into rooms barely wide enough for a mattress and a table. 5, sometimes 10 people share the same air, their beds pressed against cracked plaster walls. Lodgers, day labourers, seamstresses and out-of-work apprentices pay for a corner or a pallet, drifting in and out as fortunes waver. Kitchens double as bedrooms. A single hearth cooks thin soup for everyone, the smell of cabbage and wood smoke clinging to every surface. News of the outside world slips in with each returning lodger, and fear travels faster than bread. After the chaos at Les Halles, rumours swirl through stairwells and echo across shared landings. Who found flour? Which bakery shuttered? Did a neighbour's cousin see soldiers on the Rue Saint-Denis? In the evenings, the city's anxiety pools in taverns. Tables crowd with men and women clutching mugs of weak wine, voices low as they trade rumours of hoarding, price hikes, and the latest arrests. For many, wages are handed over across the bar before rent or food is paid. Here, every whispered complaint becomes tomorrow's certainty, and the mood hangs heavy, thick with worry and hope that the next rumour brings better news. Beneath the vaulted arcades of the Palais Royal, the air hums with a different kind of energy. Here, the city's noise is filtered through marble columns and glass-roofed galleries, where the muddy chaos of the streets gives way to a world of conversation, commerce, and ideas. Aristocrats in silk waistcoats stroll beside artisans in patched coats, their footsteps echoing past rows of shops and cafes. Bookstalls line the arcades, their tables stacked with pamphlets, forbidden tracts, and the thick, controversial volumes of the encyclopedia. Sellers keep a wary eye for police patrols, slipping censored works beneath the counter or into the hands of trusted customers. Printed words that cannot be spoken in public are exchanged in a low murmur, and then carried into nearby coffeehouses where debate flourishes over cups of chocolate and bitter coffee. In this semi-public world, the boundaries between private thought and public dissent begin to blur. A new idea, smuggled in a pamphlet or whispered across a gaming table, can travel from a clandestine bookstall to the street outside in a single afternoon, changing the course of conversation, and perhaps the city itself. Along the banks of the Seine, palatial facades rise above the river, their windows aglow with candlelight even as the city's lanes remain shrouded in darkness. Behind these tall gates, noble families spend fortunes to maintain an image of effortless grandeur. The annual cost of running a household like the Hôtel de Lausanne can reach 250,000 livres, more than most Parisians would see in a lifetime. Dozens of servants in powdered wigs and bright livery-polish marble floors tend vast kitchens and light hundreds of candles each night for grand salons. In the stables, grooms ready carriages for a single evening's ride, while footmen sweep the courtyard clean, though mud and refuse lie just beyond the gate. Here, luxury is measured in silence and shine, the labor of many hidden behind a polished door, while the city's hardship presses in from every side. By the late 1780s, the old order in Paris shows signs of unraveling. The courts, once pillars of royal authority, become battlegrounds for privilege and protest. Magistrates at the Parlement of Paris refuse to register new taxes, insisting that only the Estates General can approve fresh burdens. Royal edicts stall and legal appeals pile up, leaving justice tangled in procedure. In the faubourgs, guilds resist reforms meant to loosen their grip, defending ancient monopolies while workshops struggle to survive. Outside the courts, a different crisis unfolds. The summer of 1788 brings relentless rain and cold, ruining the wheat crop across the Île-de-France. By autumn, the price of bread in Paris has doubled. Bakers ration loaves, and hunger gnaws at every conversation. Meanwhile, the diamond necklace affair explodes in scandal. In 1785, a glittering necklace meant for the Queen is sold under false pretenses, dragging Cardinal de Rohan and Marie Antoinette's name into the mud. Pamphlets spread the story through the streets, fueling outrage. Each shock, each failed harvest, each judicial standoff, each public disgrace chips away at trust, leaving the city uneasy, waiting for relief that never comes. Beneath the surface of any great city, everyday routines can mask brewing upheaval. As economic pressures and social divides deepen worldwide, Paris reminds us even the most familiar streets can stand on the edge of transformation. History's turning points rarely announce themselves until it's too late. Which city should we visit next?